very broadly based artist. And these then are subjects of Toronto people. And this is his first definite interest in the human condition. These are people in the St. Lawrence Market, and these are two women in the, it's just called bus ladies, two women waiting in the Toronto bus station. And these then are very realistic paintings, and they tend to showcase vignettes or slices of life that were not particularly dramatic, but essentially sort of as if he had been a photographer. This I saw. This is what I saw. This is, and the subjects then were definitely just ordinary people. And that was really pretty much his interest all the way through his career, was to showcase ordinary people and the way that they lived. Now, one of the things that happens pretty early on, it's fairly evident in this work here, which is, it's about 1953 or so, Carnival. You'll see for the next 10 years or so, from about 1950 to 53 to 63, there's a certain turbulence in his artistic expression as he wrestled with what style to use. And this is not atypical of artists working in this period. There was a lot of opportunities. There were non-representational artists working in New York City and other Paris to some extent. There were representational artists working in the Midwest. We still had the legacy of the Group of Seven and other artists working in Canada. So there were a lot of options, and the artists had to choose among these options. So what he starts to do is work towards a greater sense of stylization. So he's not trying to show the same degree of realism as he had during the works of the late 40s. He also starts to work with a thicker application of paint. And some of this is actually applied with the back end of the brush, or sgraffito, as we call it. And so there's a thicker impasto, or things are getting, there's a greater sense of texture. So in a sense, this is like an illustrator's approach to art, and this is really more of an artist's approach to representation. Now, moving right along here, and I'll try not to do this to you too quickly. These three works here, the three just here, are really quite key works because they tell us of a really important development in his life, which was to have attended Mexico as a scholarship student in 1955, 1956. And he was one of the first artists who they later became kind of literally a highway of Calgary artists going down to San Miguel de Allende. And he won a full scholarship to attend the Institute in San Miguel, and it was a paid scholarship. And I was able to sort of get some stats on what that money of those days would have bought. And so the money wasn't a huge amount, but he was able to, with that money, he could afford a house, they could get a housekeeper, they could get a cook. So it was a totally different way of thinking. And in conversation with me, he said that this was a huge breakthrough for him because he felt that it reinforced and, in a sense, cemented his conviction and his reputation as being a professional artist. He didn't have to think of himself as having to work 3 jobs and do the art on the side. So these are some Mexican pilgrims here. He took photographs, and these were, there were a number of religious pilgrimages of one sort or another, and he was quite interested in these, indeed fascinated by them. This is the church in the center of the city. I haven't actually been to the city of San Miguel, but you can see that this is a remarkable church. And you'll notice that, again, the stylistic variation, or the stylistic I guess you could say openness is evident very much in these works here as he thought about, well, what is the appropriate style that I'm going to be using? I should mention, and some of you may be aware of this already, that of course the most exciting developments in Mexican art during this period were the great Mexican muralists. And so he actually went to Mexico City. He saw the works of Diego Rivera and of Siqueiros and Orozco, and visited their studios. So this was really quite exciting for him. And I think he then came home with a sense of purpose. He said, well, this is what I can do when I get back. is to create these sort of mural works. And I'll leave that hanging for a moment because it wasn't actually to come to fruition, but it was something that he came home with, was an enhanced sense of purpose and calling as an artist. This work here, Study of a Mexican Mother, shows that he really was trying to, take the form and break it up. And certainly for the next 5 or so years, you'll see that the paintings become more experimental, very much so. And one of the phrases that he used in conversation was, and this is a kind of a negative phrase for him, he would say that paintings were form locked. That is to say that they were locked into a kind of a sense of too much enclosure. So what he had hoped for and what he believed was important to express was a sense of them opening up. These two here actually predate his trip to Mexico. It's a bit curious because those of you who are familiar with Mexican art, I think you'd say, well, yes, these are in the tradition of the heroic worker of Mexico. But instead, these are from about 1952 or so. And they reflect his experiences working as a summer worker in Yoho, among other places. So these are actually, workers and city workers that he was painting at the time. Now, I'm going to change gears to some extent because this room here is not only early works, but it's also thematic works. And so that's what we tried to do with this show, is organize it both thematically and chronologically. So the rest of this room is going to include drawings, and I want to talk just a little bit about these drawings, and also some early sketches. So if I could ask you to come over to the wall, please. One of the very characteristic aspects of his work, his mature work, is a sense that a single moment in time wasn't sufficient to represent really much of anything. And so his paintings start to show a simultaneity of forms as if they had been like sequence of a film. And I asked him about this, and I was quite curious because I was wondering if he had been influenced by film. But instead, he replied that no, it was really that there were infinite possibilities in a given moment. And to freeze it in simply one moment was to say that that was all there was. But rather, it was a sense that no, things are going to unfold, and there's a moment now, but there were moments before, and there were moments to come. So this is very evident in a drawing like this, which is showing a woman lying down and then moving up, and really in a process of experiences. And as we go through the mature works, I'll invite you to keep this kind of approach in mind, because you'll start to see what I've sometimes called a stutter stop approach in the work. Or you'll also see evidence where you'll have a figure frontally shown, and then there'll be figures in profile attached to the same individual. And again, it's simply to suggest that just as I have done now with you, turning this way, and turning this way, there are going to be these unfolding moments. It was also evident that this kind of approach was influenced by his interest in Buddhism, which was to suggest that there is an invitation for us to become open to reflecting on what it means to be human. Now, it's not that he was uninterested or unsympathetic to other perspectives, and I'll show you in the next room that his early upbringing was Christian, and he remained very sympathetic to Christian principles, but it's just that Buddhism seemed to open up a wider view of the world. So we don't have time really to go through these drawings individually, but I would invite you, if you have time after the tour, or if you'd like to dawdle, that's fine with me too, just look at some of these drawings and you'll see this simultaneity of form, or of expression, that is quite characteristic of his work. Now, very directly Buddhist are these drawings here. These are laughing figures, and they were executed in 1973, and originally were shown in St. Mary